Welcome back to Skill Up Stand channel. This video is part of the exam preparation series for Azure Fundamental Exam, and we are going to discuss a few questions around the topic describe cloud concept. We can expect at least 10 questions from this particular segment from the Azure Fundamental actual exam. Okay, so let's get into that. So when it comes to public cloud, the major difference with regards to how the expenditure model works. So there are two different expenditure model. One is the capital expenditure model where you go and buy everything upfront, whatever you need for your on-premises data center. Whereas operational model is about the renting concept. So you have rented some asset and you will be paying for the consumption at the end of the month. So it is buying everything upfront versus uh, operating expenditure. Operating expenditure is the renting resources model. You have to pay as per the consumption, pay as per the usage. So people call it as utility model, right? The electricity and then whatever you have at your home, the water supply. So you pay for whatever you are consuming. So the cloud is not just about this. So it has got a lot of other interesting factors like when you use more capacity, you can save a lot of cost in the public cloud as you and also you can have a lot of options to do auto scaling, right sizing, so that you can just configure the resources as per the demand from your business application. So let's see what kind of questions we'll get from the capital expenditure versus the operational expenditure model. So the first question, see, there might be some distracting lines which you can ignore. The crux of the question is like we need to identify the expenditure model for the planned Azure solution. So what we are planning here, we are planning to have 1,000 virtual machine hosted on Hyper-V host, which is currently in the data center. And we are planning to migrate all of the virtual machines to Azure pay-as-you-go subscription model. So they are asking us what expenditure model will be the destination model, right? So there are only two models, right? Operational expenditure model and capital. Capital is upfront investment. This is what we generally do in our on-premises. So this is not the right answer. Whereas the right answer is operational expenditure model. That is the model that we will have it in Azure. So you will pay based on the consumption. Whereas the other two options are related to cloud feature, the elasticity and what do you call the scalability and all. It's all features or characteristics of cloud. It's not the expenditure model. So the right answer is operational expenditure model. And we might also get yes or no questions where we might have to identify whether the statement is true or not. Okay, so Azure provides flexibility between capital expenditure and operational expenditure. Yes, public cloud by default, it gives you the model called the pay-as-you-go pricing model, the pay-as-you-go consumption model. But you can also save a lot of cost by doing up some upfront investment like purchasing reservations or reserved instances or going and purchasing some compute savings plan and so on. You can get a lot of cost benefit. So you have both the models available even in the public cloud, but the default model is operational expenditure model. So the answer to this question is like you have the flexibility. Yes. Okay. So you can get it. And then if you create two Azure VM with a particular instance size, they are asking us whether each of the VM will generate the same monthly cost every month. Okay, so the monthly cost does not just depend on the instance size. Yeah, instance size does matter, or it is one of the pricing characteristics. So whatever the number of CPU or the instance type that you are provisioning, like the CPU memory will have a cost. On top of that, you will also have cost for your public IP addresses, and you will have cost for your network interface card, not for the network interface card, the network data transfer out of your region, and you will also have bill for your actual virtual machine disk consumption. So that is the primary aspect. So data transfer out, data storage on your disk, and the public IP address will be chargeable. So to answer this question, so not every single VM which is running with B2S will have the same cost. So there will be difference in the cost between two different VM running the same instance type, because the disk usage might differ, and some of them might have a public IP address, some of them might not have. Some machine might have a Linux operating system, some might have a Windows operating system, and so it all has a lot of other pricing characteristics. So the answer for this question is, the each VM will not have the same monthly cost. So the pricing The cost will differ from one VM to another VM, even though they belong to the same instance size. Okay, that's the answer. When an Azure VM is stopped, you continue to pay storage cost associated with them. That is true, actually. Yes. So when the VM is stopped, you don't have to pay for the compute CPU cycle or the memory, whereas you still have to pay for your storage consumption because you are occupying the capacity from your Azure storage account. And you don't have to pay for the data transfer out because your system will not be running, so there won't be any data transfer or data access, but you still have to pay for your storage associated with the VM. You don't have to pay the compute cost. Azure pay-as-you-go pricing model is an example of capital expenditure. No, it is not an example of capex. So Azure pay-as-you-go pricing model is a operational expenditure model example. So this is answer no. Paying electricity bill for your data center is an example of operational expenditure. Yeah, that's what we saw, right? So paying electricity and then paying salary for your employees. So those are all coming under your operational expenditure. So we can just say yes. And then deploying your own data center is an example of capital expenditure. Yeah, that is true. Yes. So when we have our own data center deployed and managed, so it is an example of capital expenditure. Leasing a software is an example of operational cost. Yes. So no, leasing a software is a upfront investment. Okay, so you have to lease the software. So it is not an example of operational cost. So this is answer no. Okay, leasing software is an example of capital expenditure. Monthly salaries for technical personnel are example of operational cost. Yes, that is true. So it is an operational cost, paying salary for the technical team. Building a data center infrastructure is an example of operational cost. No, it is not the case. So building a data center infrastructure is an example of capital expenditure. Right, let's move on with the next set of questions. So, okay, so those are the questions you can anticipate from capital expenditure versus operational expenditure model. So you can expect at least 2 or 3 questions from that particular expenditure model. Now, moving on to the Azure resource hierarchy. So you have two different hierarchical arrangement. One is like how the resources are getting arranged. So you have Azure global infrastructure, and within that you have a grouping called geographies. This is to meet the security, legal, residency requirement of your data and your application related contents. And within that, you have a regional path. This is for disaster recovery. If one region goes down, you can have a DR location from a different region. And you have something called availability zone. This is nothing but a physical data center in Azure term. And within that, you have availability set, which is nothing but a physical rack. And if you want to have high availability, you can place your VMs in two different rack, or you can place it in two different data centers. Or if you need very high availability, like 99.99s of availability, then you can, not 99s, it is 99.99 percentage availability, then you can go for having your servers across different data centers or different geographical regions. And this is how the resource hierarchy looks like. You have a management group. This is mainly needed when you have more than 2 or 3 subscription and you want to have governance policies and practices applied from centralized location. And you have something called resource groups, where you group the resources based on the department or environment, or based on your organizational strategy. You can have the resources grouped under resource group. So each of your resources can be part of only one resource group, and similarly resource group can be part of a particular subscription. So you cannot have the same resource part of two resource groups. That is not possible. And again, you cannot create a resource group within resource group. So these are all some basic stuff that you need to be aware of. Even you can expect some basic questions around those areas. So let's see what kind of questions we will get around these stuff. Again, this is an SR no question. You have to select the yes or no option for each of the question. You can create a resource group inside of another resource group. No, it is not possible. An Azure virtual machine can be in multiple resource group. No, it is not possible. You cannot have the single VM in multiple resource group. You can have one-to-one mapping only. A resource group can contain resources from multiple Azure region. Yeah, so you can have a VM running in East US. You can have a VM running in South India or wherever location. Those two VMs can be logically grouped into the resource group. So resource group can contain resources from any single region or any different region. Okay, so that is not a limitation. So the answer is yes for this. Let's move on. And again, you have a question, you might get a question around availability SLA. Since the customers will ask for service level agreement, and SLA is mainly for the availability of your application, the uptime of your application. So this is how you measure your uptime. And we, as a provider, we might have to agree on a particular contractual agreement with the customer, and we have to say like your business application will be available for 99.90 SLA or 99.95 or 99.99. So if you need to achieve 99.95, you need to have your virtual machine across two different racks. We need to have at least two different VMs. And if you want to achieve 99.99, you should at least have two virtual machines across two different physical data centers. So that way you can get a 99.99 uptime percentage for your virtual machines or for your application, in fact, okay, at the application level. So the question here is, again, it is a yes or no statement question. You can use availability zone in Azure to protect Azure VM from data center level failure. Yes, availability zone is physical data center. So this can help you to get protection against one data center failure. Even if one data center fails, the other availability zone can have the Azure VM running and your application will still be available. You can use availability zone in Azure to protect Azure VM from regional failure. No, if the region fails, all the availability zone within that region will have issues. So you cannot protect your Azure virtual machine across from regional failure. If the entire region goes down, then all the virtual machines in that particular region, from all the physical data centers, from all the availability zone will be impacted. You can use availability zone to protect Azure managed disk from data center level failure. Yes, so Azure managed disk, it can be scattered across multiple physical data centers. Even one physical data center goes down, your VM and its associated disk will still be available. Yeah, we can use Azure availability zone to protect disk level failure or at a particular data center level. So availability zone is equal to physical data center. So physical data center level, the physical data center level failure can be tolerated with availability zone concept. Let's move on and see what kind of questions we have. Again, yes or no statement. Availability zone can be implemented in all Azure region. No, that is not the case. For example, in South India, Chennai, we don't have multiple availability zone. So in most of the Azure regions are having two availability zone or three availability zones. Majority of them have three availability zone, but it is not available in all the Azure region. So it is not available in all Azure region. It is available in most of them, but not in all of them. So the answer is no for this. Only VM that runs Windows Server can be created in availability zone. No, it can, you can create virtual machines like running Linux or Windows, and you can create them in whatever availability zone. So answer is no. The question is distracting. Like they are saying, like only Windows Server can be ran on different availability zone, and you can get tolerance. Okay, it's not the case. You can even create a Linux virtual machine, and you can place them in different availability zone. Availability zone are used to replicate data and applications to multiple regions. See, primarily availability zone is not a replication feature. So availability zone is a physical data center. And even if you consider the replication and stuff, it cannot replicate across different multiple regions. So it can, the availability zone is a physical data center, and you cannot think about replication and data applications to multiple regions. So multiple region is also something which is distracting, and it is not a solution for replicating your data. So answer is no. Okay, interesting. All three questions are having answer no. Fine. So availability zone is a physical data center. It has nothing to do with multiple regions or replication stuff. So here, the question is, you plan to deploy a critical line of application to Azure, business application to Azure. The business application will run on an Azure virtual machine. Fine. You need to recommend a deployment solution for the application. The solution must provide a guaranteed availability of 99.99%. What is the minimum number of virtual machine and minimum number of availability zone you should recommend for the deployment? So definitely for 99.99, you should have minimum of two virtual machine, and those two virtual machine has to be kept in two different physical data center, which is two different availability zones. So they are asking us how many number of so you need to select the number from the drop down. So I will select number 2 for minimum number of virtual machine, and I will choose two availability zone for minimum number of availability zone, now minimum number of physical data center to get 99.99 of percent of SLA. You need to identify the type of failure for which an Azure availability zone can be used to protect access to Azure services. So they are asking us what is the level of failure that it can tolerate when you are choosing Azure availability zone. So it is pretty straightforward. It can tolerate at the Azure data center failure level, right? So that is the right answer. But if you're looking at the other things, so physical server level failure can be tolerated in availability zone itself, and Azure regional failure cannot be tolerated using availability zone. It needs paired region to have the Azure regional level failure toleration. Storage level failure can also be mitigated with availability set concept, where you can have two different storages in two different physical rack, where it can be tolerated using availability set itself. But the data center level failure is what the availability zone is known for. Next question is, your company plans to migrate to Azure. The company has several departments. All the Azure resources used by each department will be managed by different department administrators. So they will have a department administrator for each of the departments. So what they are asking is, how do we segment? What are the two possible techniques to segment the Azure for each of the department? So what you can do is you can segment them, or you can group them using different subscriptions, or you can group them using multiple resource group. But the other two options that they are given, so this is mainly when you have multiple different sub organization within your company, within your organization, you can go for different AD tenant. If they have a separate AD domain, you can have separate tenants created or directories created for each of them. And multiple region is mainly for availability of your applications, or if you want to replicate your contents across different geographical locations. This is mainly for high availability, the multiple region. It is not for segmenting your resources or grouping your resources. So this is also not the right answer. So you can either segregate them using different subscription or different resource groups, so that you can give permission to the specific department administrator who is responsible for managing the appropriate team's resources, department's resources. So now this question has got a underline on the question itself. They are asking us whether the statement is true or not. And if the statement is true, then we can answer it as no change is needed, or else we need to complete the sentence by going through each of this. So let's see. An Azure region contains one or more data center that are connected by using a low latency network. Yeah, looks like a right statement, but let's try to continue with the other statement. An Azure region is found in each country where Microsoft has a subsidiary office. No, Microsoft has got a lot of subsidiary access across many cities, countries, and so on. So they don't have a region in every single location. So it is not a right um, statement for Azure region. And let's look at the other statement. An Azure region can be found in every country in Europe and Americas. No, that is also not the statement. So we don't have data center in many countries in Europe and Americas. We have limited countries where we have Azure regions or Azure presence, Azure regional presence. Azure region contains one or more data center that are connected by using a high latency network. High latency means there is a lot of slowness in your data or traffic or network. There is a very high latency. So this is not the right answer. So each of the Azure data centers are connected with very high direct connect cabling connections. So it provides a very low latency between the data centers. So the answer is there is no changes needed in the statement. An Azure region contains one or more data center that are connected by a low latency network. So answer is there is no change needed in the question. So that stands correct. The next question, this question is a part of series of questions. See, generally if you are going with series of questions, then you have to answer it at the first time. You cannot review it later, so you have to try and attempt it with your answer of choice, because there is no negative marking, right? So even if you select the wrong answer, it is not going to impact your negative score. It is not going to take you to negative score. It is going to give you 0 marks, but it is not going to impact it. So you should answer all the questions, right? And especially this particular series of questions that you need to try and attempt it now only, because you cannot return to the question with these kind of series of question stuff. Okay, let's go through the question. You plan to deploy several Azure virtual machines. You need to ensure that the services running on the VM are available if a single data center fail. Okay, that's I mean, we have been used to this question right now. So you want to tolerate the failure of Azure virtual machines, and you need to have the virtual machine available even if one data center fails. So what we need to do, we need to deploy the virtual machine in two or more availability zone. That is the right answer, right? So you deploy the virtual machine to two or more availability zone. Yeah, that stands correct. You deploy the virtual machine to two or more region. Yeah, that is also possible. You can have a data center failure tolerated here. You deploy the virtual machine to two or more resource groups. No, resource groups is for creating isolation and segmentation for management purpose, not for having toleration at the data center level failure. You deploy the virtual machine to a scale set. That is also auto scaling concept. Scale set is nothing but you are deploying it in auto scaling. This is mainly to have better performance for your application. Whenever there is an increase in load, the systems will the instances will get the virtual machines will get increased, and whenever the load decreases, the virtual machine will get decommissioned. So this will not help you with tolerating the data center level failure. So if you want to tolerate the data center level failure, you need to have the virtual machine either across two different availability zone or two different geographical physical regions where you can have the tolerance when a single data center goes down. So next question, yeah, so this is pretty straightforward. Service level agreement, it guarantees uptime. So rest of them, SLA is nothing to do with the feature or bandwidth or uptime. Sorry, feature or bandwidth or performance. Uptime is the right answer. So SLA is an agreement for virtual machine which guarantees uptime for your virtual machine or application running on top of it. You have an on-premises network that contains several servers. You plan to migrate all of the servers to Azure. You need to recommend a solution to ensure that some of the servers are available if single data center goes offline for an external period. What should you include in the recommendation? So they're asking us what kind of feature will help us achieve this. So elasticity is like increase more virtual machine whenever there is a, or like adding additional capacity or adding additional network adapter on the fly. So these are all not going to help with data center level failures. And scalability, again, this is mainly auto scaling. Whenever there is an increase in load, your virtual machines will increase and decrease. So this is also not going to help with data center level failure. And low latency is about the network traffic and speed. So fault tolerance is the concept where you can have multiple data centers or multiple regions covered with fault tolerance. So if you want to tolerate a failure, then the concept is called fault tolerance concept. So this can help you with um, even if a single Azure data center goes offline, you can still have fault tolerated using availability zone concept. Okay, and the concept name is fault tolerance. So you need to understand the different support plans that we have got whenever we are running Azure workloads on Azure platform, Azure data center. We need to choose the right support plan for the workloads that we are running. If you are running some development workload or trial non-production workload, then we will go for developer. And in all the plans, we have 24/7 access to the billing, subscription, support, online self-help, and all those things. But in basic, you cannot raise a technical support case. The reason is like basic is mainly for practicing free tier and all those stuff. So it is mainly for POCs and stuff. But in this case, you can raise a support case for any account login related issues, or if there is a billing generated by mistake, you can raise a support case for those cases, but you cannot raise a technical support case in basic plan. But for developer, standard, professional, direct, and premier, yeah, you can go and have a technical support request raised. And in all these plans, the main difference is in a developer plan, you can only reach out the technical support engineers via email. You don't have a phone support option here. So the minimal plan that we get phone support is the standard plan, and in professional and premier also you can get support via email and the phone. And also here you get only business hour support in developer plan. With standard you get 24/7 access to the support engineers, and you can get unlimited thing. So in all the plans you'll get 24/7 access to billing details, subscription details, online help, documentation, support forum, white paper, all access will be available. Let's see what kind of questions we will get in this support plan. A support plan solution that gives you best practice information, health status and notification, and 24/7 access to billing. What is the lowest possible cost? Is it a standard? So you need to look at the word which is underlined here. So they're asking whether standard is the cheapest plan where you will get all these stuff. Okay, so this is the keyword here. So if you look at here, they are just asking about how do we get access to best practice information, health status, notification, 24/7. See, even you can get all these things in basic plan itself. You get 24/7 access to billing, subscription, documentation, help, white papers, and support forum. So I would go for basic. So that is the right answer because that is the cheapest one. They are asking which plan is the lowest possible cost. So lowest possible cost is the basic support plan. So you need to go for basic option. So rest of them are chargeable, a little higher charges. Okay, so in which Azure support plan can you open a new technical support request? So technical support request you cannot raise it in basic. So wherever the answer has got basic, you need not, you should not choose that. Whereas the rest of the plan, the premier, which is the unified plan now, so earlier it used to be called as premier, now people call it as unified, and it is generally called as enterprise agreement plan. And professional, direct, standard, developer, so all these plan has got technical support request, we can go and raise it. So the answer should be this one, where except of basic, all the other plans gives you new technical support request raising option. Okay, let's go with the next question. The Azure Standard Support Plan is the lowest cost possible to receive 24/7 access to support engineers by phone. Yeah, phone is the keyword, and yeah, that seems to be true. Okay, for standard is the cheapest one. So phone support is available in standard, professional services or professional direct, and it's also available in the unified premier plan or the enterprise agreement. So the cheapest one is standard. Yeah, there is no changes needed. So in developer plan we don't have phone support. Okay, in basic plan also we don't have phone support, but in professional direct we do have phone support, but it is costlier than the standard plan. So if you go for this, then it will not be the lowest cost option. So the question is, what is the lowest cost option to get phone support? Answer is standard, and that is there in the statement itself. So right answer is no changes needed in the statement. So now the last set of questions in this part 2, and let's go to the question. And your company plans to purchase an Azure subscription. The company's support policy states that the Azure environment must provide an option to access support engineers by phone as well as email. Okay, so their question is we need phone support as well as email support. And okay, so basic plan you don't have phone support, and in developer plan you don't have phone support, and in premier unified plan, yes, you do have phone support, and even professional direct you have phone support, and in standard also you have phone support. It's pretty straightforward, right? It's a easy question to answer. So whenever the question has the phone support option, then you need to either choose standard or professional direct or premier, which is the unified plan now. And if they ask for the lowest possible option in with phone support, then standard is the right answer. So thank you for dialing in and listening.